Hello YouTube. Welcome to my Disc Priest guide. I hope you're all excited, all 50 of you that will be playing Kata. It would be nice if more people wanted to play Kata, but all the normies would rather play Sod. But it is what it is. You know, that's their decision. But since the dad gamers aren't going to play Kata, and the Wrath babies, they aren't going to play Kata, maybe, just maybe, I can convince the retail Zoomers to play Kata. You know who I'm talking about? The people who started playing the game in Legion. Those guys. Because let's be honest here. The War Within is going to be absolute trash. Okay, like obviously. I mean, they might as well call it the Cringe Within. Because that shit's going to be so fucking cringe. Like, it's just going to be the same shit. It's going to be the same awful gameplay, the same awful everything. So, like, don't even waste your time with it. Okay, listen. You, as a retail enjoyer, a child of retail, you have one shot, one opportunity to play Cataclysm and experience the greatest healer gameplay, the greatest expansion for raid healing that has ever existed in the entire history of the game. And all you have to do is give it a chance. But enough of that. We're here to talk about Disc Priest in Cataclysm, which is quite possibly the most challenging healer that I've ever seen in the history of this game. And it's also really fun, it's interesting, it's got a lot going on. So if that sounds like something that you'd want to try out, then I'd recommend playing Disc. So let's start off by talking about stats. Usually I never talk about stats because you can just copy the stat priority off of a website somewhere. But there is one little quirky thing about Disc Priest, and Holy Priest for that matter, when it comes to stats, and that is that priests are the only healers in Kata that don't need to stack the living shit out of haste. Haste is still good, mind you, but mastery just straight up increases your healing. Haste only increases your healing if you have a hot or a healing circle of some kind, which Disc Priest doesn't. Holy Priest does, but their hot and healing circle are complete garbage. So stacking haste isn't going to matter too much for them either. You do, however, get extra ticks of Divine Hymn by stacking haste, but that's not going to be too important, I don't think, especially for Disc, since Disc Priest Divine Hymn is really shitty. I think you can get an extra tick of Penance by stacking haste, but you need to get a lot of haste for that to happen, so I don't really think it's worth it. Anyways, all this means is that Mastery is going to be your best secondary stat, and you're going to reforge out of Crit to get more Mastery since Crit is trash, but do not reforge out of haste. Just keep whatever haste you have on your gear. Okay? Fine. Let's talk about talents now. Here's your standard build, and there's a few things that I would like to talk about here. The first and most important talent that I need to mention is Atonement. This spell is required for raiding. Don't listen to any of those stupid idiots who say that you don't have to use it. You have to use it. It's just better than not using it by a good amount. And if you don't like that, then you probably shouldn't play Disc Priest, to be honest, because I don't like Atonement healing. I think Smart healing is horrible for the game, but I don't think it ruins the gameplay in this case, because the way they've tuned Atonement healing in Cataclysm is pretty much perfect. It's not too strong to the point where it ruins the game, like it does in Mop, but not too weak, where you would never want to use it. So I think Blizzard did an excellent job with Atonement. The next talent I want to talk about is Strength of Soul. You can put 1 or 2 points into this talent, it's up to you, but all it does is it reduces the duration of Weakened Soul. So why would we want to do that? Well, the reason is because Rapture can only happen every 12 seconds, and Weakened Soul lasts for 15 seconds, which means you need to land at least 1 heal or greater heal on the tank every 12 seconds for the entire fight on every boss, for the most part. There will be situations where you won't want to do that, but I'll go over that later into the guide. Moving on, we've got Divine Aegis, which got buffed in Cataclysm. Now every single cast of Prayer of Healing applies Divine Aegis. You don't need to crit with Prayer of Healing to trigger it. And considering that Prayer of Healing is one of your best abilities, this makes the value of crit plummet into the ground, while simultaneously making the value of Mastery shoot up, because you want all of your Divine Aegis shields to be big and strong. Next up, we've got Grace. This is an amazing talent in Cataclysm, and it single-handedly makes Disc Priests the best tank healers in the game. And why does it do that? Well, it makes it so that you don't experience a lot of mana efficiency losses when you tank heal. So for example, if a druid were to spam Nourish or Healing Touch on the tank, that's a significant mana efficiency loss. If a pally uses Divine Light on the tank, that's an efficiency loss. And the same goes with Shaman's Greater Healing Wave or Holy Priest's Greater Heal. Disc Priests, on the other hand, are the only healers that can cast Heal and Greater Heal on the tank and not suffer a big loss in mana efficiency, and it's because of Grace. You also have Penance, which the other healers don't have, and that in and of itself is an amazing heal for tank healing. Also keep in mind that Grace buffs all of your spells except for Powered Shield. The heal portion of Glyph of Powered Shield is buffed, but not the Powered Shield itself. Regardless of that though, the gameplay will be to try and maintain Grace on the tank as much as possible throughout every boss fight. Now most of these talents are required to take. There's only 3 that aren't, and it's these 3. You might be surprised that Soul Warding is one of the 3. Soul Warding is actually trash in Cataclysm. In Wrath of Lich King, 1 point in Soul Warding reduced the cooldown of Powered Shield by 4 seconds, whereas in Cataclysm, 1 point in Soul Warding reduces the cooldown of Powered Shield by 1 second. And on top of that, Powered Shield is much worse in Cata than it was in Wrath, which means you do not need to spam Powered Shield in a raid, and therefore you do not need Soul Warding. In regards to these other talents that you could take, well, they all kind of blow dick, honestly. I mean, you could take Train of Thought, but it's pretty trash, and you could take Darkness, but you know, it's alright, it's not great. You could take Veiled Shadows, but I don't think you'll get any use out of it, to be honest with you. And you could take Inspiration, if you don't have a Resto Shaman providing that buff for you. And you could take Surge of Light, but just don't take Surge of Light. Okay, what are you, fucking weird or something? Jesus. Anyways, these glyphs are pretty self-explanatory. You're just going to use these, and you'll swap between Glyph of Powered Barrier and Glyph of Powered Shield, depending on the fight. So, for example, on Valiona and Theralion, you wouldn't want to use Glyph of Powered Barrier because people are just going to run out of your barrier the moment you put it down. But for Chimeron, you have to use Glyph of Powered Barrier for the intermission phases. Now, the main reason why I wanted to talk to you about the talents is because I have a brand spanking new, woke as fuck build that I have to share with you. Okay, it's not that woke, but it's pretty cool, you know. I think it'll be good for dungeons, and it'll be good on Nefarian and Onyxia specifically, but probably not any other raid boss, to be honest with you. Maybe in 10-man, it'll be good, but regardless, I thought I'd share it with you anyways. So, did you know that Renew can actually be really good for Disc Priests? Oh yes. And that is what this build is designed to make happen. Now there's a lot of factors that go into making Renew a good ability to use. First off, you have a new spell called Inner Will, which you can swap to, and it gives Renew an efficiency boost. Next, we have Grace, as I talked about before, which will buff your Renew's healing by a whopping 24%. And then you have a talent called Improved Renew in conjunction with Glyph of Renew, which buffs its healing by an additional 35%. And lastly, you have an absolutely delicious interaction with Borrowed Time. Renew not only benefits from borrowed time, but it also doesn't consume it for whatever reason, which means you can spam renew while borrowed time is active, and each of those renews will have an extra tick because haste gives your HOTS more ticks. Now with raid gear and raid buffs, you might even be able to get 2 extra ticks of renew with not even that much haste on your gear. And do you know how efficient a renew is that ticks 6 times and has all of these other factors combined? Well, renew would literally be as efficient as Prayer of Healing on 5 players, and the HPS will be really good as well. So this is kind of a big deal. Another benefit of this renew spec is that it's extremely mobile, which will be really important on Nefarian and Onyxia Phase 3. Because the tank is going to be moving constantly, which is really bad for the regular disc spec because it is extremely immobile. The only instant cast spell you would want to be using during this phase is Powered Shield once every 12 seconds for Rapture, which doesn't give you much opportunity to move your character. With this Renew spec, on the other hand, you'll be using Inner Will, which will make Powered Shield and Renew more efficient. 2 points in Strength of Soul will make it so that you can use Powered Shield on the tank all the time, and you'll be using Renew a lot. That is a lot of instant cast spells that you're going to be pressing, and you will be free to move your character around as you're casting them. Also, Borrowed Time makes it so that you don't have to run a full haste build to get the 2 extra ticks of Renew, which is good because you're going to be using Powered Shield a lot on the tank, and you'll want to have a lot of mastery to buff all of those shields. Anyways, I'll be covering Nefarian and Onyxia with the woke spec at the end of the video, but for now, let's take a look at the spells. This is going to be a long video, I can already tell. Literally not my fault though. There's just so much to talk about with the Disc Priest. But here's your healing per second and healing per mana breakdowns, and right off the bat, I can tell you that this part of the video is going to be a bit different from the Resto Druid video that I made, because for Resto Druid, both of these lists looked almost exactly the same. Whereas for Disc Priest, they don't. Especially in that middle part there. And keep in mind that my assumptions with these lists are that Inner Fire is being used instead of Inner Will. Grace, Evangelism, and Lift of Smite are not being applied. And I'm also assuming that your Divine Aegises do not expire worthless when you use Prayer of Healing. If you want to see what the mana efficiency of Prayer of Healing is when your Divine Aegises do expire worthless, I'll show them in red here. Now, as you gain more experience as a healer, you will be able to get a feel for which spells should be used as much as possible, and which spells you should avoid casting as much as possible. In my experience, I would say that these spells here you would want to cast as much as possible, and the rest of them should be avoided until you get more gear. Now, the really sexual thing about Disc Priest is that even though all of these spells that are outside of the red box might suck initially, they can become good under the right circumstances. So for example, Powered Shield, if you have a lot of mastery, if you have it lift, and if you are using Inner Will instead of Inner Fire, is actually a lot more efficient than Prayer of Healing on 3 players. Binding Heal, if you have Grace on both the tank and yourself, is more efficient than Prayer of Healing on 3 players as well. Although that situation will pretty much never happen. And Heal is more efficient than Prayer of Healing on 3 players if you use it on someone who has Grace. Greater Heal is almost there, but not quite. So I'll throw that in yellow as well so that you can see. And lastly, Smite is more efficient than Prayer of Healing on 3 players if you have 5 stacks of Evangelism and Lift of Smite active. And it's even more efficient if your Smite hits the tank who has Grace. So if any of these situations arise where you can use these abilities when they're in their most efficient states, then it's not a bad idea to use them since they're within the red box now. But remember that this is still a priority list, and these spells up here are really good, and nothing takes priority over those. As for the spells that are outside of the red box, well, they need to be avoided as much as possible. So, in regards to Powered Shield, this ability acts as your secondary mana dump. Prayer of Healing is your main mana dump, but the problem with Prayer of Healing is that it does not cost enough mana to truly deplete your mana bar on most bosses. So, what's going to happen is you'll be using these spells that are within the red box very often. You'll be using Heal on the tank that has Grace once every 12 seconds because of Strength of Soul. Powered Shield on the tank to proc Rapture. Penance and Holy Fire off cooldown for the most part. A little bit of Smite to get to 5 stacks of Evangelism, and potentially some more Smites when you're at 5 stacks because it's within the red box. And throughout the process of pressing all of these abilities, along with Prayer of Healing and Prayer of Mending as much as possible throughout the entire fight, you're still going to have a little bit of mana to spare. So which spell do we want to use to deplete the rest of our mana? Do we want to use Binding Heal, Greater Heal on the tank, or Powered Shield, which will be Lift most of the time? Well, you want to use Powered Shield, because despite being in Inner Fire, which you should be most of the time, Powered Shield is still more mana efficient than these other spells, except for Greater Heal on the tank, which you can use as your secondary mana dump instead of Powered Shield, if the tank really needs the healing. But just remember that regardless of which of these spells that you choose, this is still going to be your secondary mana dump. You still want to spend the vast majority of your mana on all of the spells that are within the red box. So don't go crazy spamming Powered Shield or Greater Heal on the tank, because you'll go if you do. Now let's look at the HPS list. So the most interesting thing about this list is just how much HPS Powered Shield does and how little HPS Penance does. But what does that mean for our gameplay? Well, if the raid is getting fucked up by, let's say, the breath on Magma, and you're forced to move because of this mechanic that's happening at the same time, well, you can use Powered Shield as you're moving and you'll hardly lose any HPS at all because Powered Shield does very high HPS. Just be careful though, because like I said before, there's only so much Powered Shield you can use throughout the fight. If you use it too much, you'll go And as for Penance, well, the HPS is trash, so if the raid is getting fucked up in the last phase of Ascending Council, for example, you would not want to use Penance because the raid will just die faster. Instead, if you need to save someone's life during this phase, use Powered Shield instead, because the HPS is much higher. Alright, that was the gameplay portion of the guide. So, just to reiterate, you're going to use Prayer Mending and Prayer of Healing on 4 to 5 people as much as possible. This takes priority over everything except for in emergency situations where you need to save someone's life. Next in priority is Penance on whoever needs it the most, unless you just need more HPS to stop the raid from dying, in which case don't use Penance because the HPS is trash. Holy Fire is next in priority. Try to cast 3 smites afterward because of Glyph of Smite. You're going to use Heal at least once every 12 seconds on the tank because of Strength of Soul, but don't stop spamming Prayer of Healing just to cast Heal. Prayer of Healing always takes priority. Powered Shield will be used for Rapture and to make yourself go faster, since it's your secondary mana dump. Unless you're using Inner Will, then it can be used more often. Greater Heal on the tank will only be used when necessary, and as for the rest of these spells, you won't use them at all unless you need to save someone's life. Except for Smite, of course, because you need to build Evangelism stacks for Archangel. And that's it. It's a little bit different from Wrath Disc Priest, huh? Not brain dead anymore. And the best part is that it's not toxic either, because Disc Priest is an absolute cancer to the game in every expansion from Wrath to Legion, except for in this expansion. So well done, Blizzard. Well done. And as for dungeon healing, well, it's going to be very difficult and miserable for everyone involved. Pray that Blizzard does the nerfed versions of the dungeons, or else many people are going to quit the instant they step in the dungeon finder for the first time, just like they did in original Cata. But all I would recommend for dungeon healing is to try and get 5 stacks of Evangelism right on the pole and just try to heal efficiently until someone starts dying really fast. And once that happens, just pop Archangel with however many stacks that you have and start spamming your highest HBS abilities. And here are the lists that you can follow for that. All you want to do is you want to start at the top and go down. So if one player is getting fucked up, which more often than not will be the tank, or if a bunch of people are dying, but one player is dying faster than everyone else, you just use Powered Shield on the Mace app, then use Penance to apply Grace if it's off cooldown, then spam Greater Heal. If 3 players are getting fucked, then use Prayer of Mending first, shield them all, then start spamming Prayer of Healing. And if 5 players are getting fucked, then just use Palm and start spamming Prayer of Healing. Do not be scared to use Powered Shield and Greater Heal in dungeons. In raids, you should be scared to use them, but in dungeons, the damage is going to be really random and really bursty and terrifying, so you'll have to use them. Now, if you want to be real freaky with it, you can use Inner Will and play this Renew spec here for dungeons, which I feel would work really well, to be honest, if you play it right. So instead of having to use Prayer of Healing when 3 people are taking damage, you would instead press Powered Shield on one person, put Renew up on the 3 players taking damage with Borrowed Time active, press Powered Shield some more, use Penance, and then start spamming Prayer of Healing or Greater Heal if you need to. Here's what it looks like. Alright, here's a Heroic Dungeon. I'm just going to show you the first trash pack here. I have 334 item level on this private server, no gems or enchants. I believe the minimum item level for Heroic Dungeons is 329. So let's see what I do here. Where's the tank at? Is he coming? Yeah, he's coming. So Powered Shield, permanenting on the tank before he gets in there. And the tank's a Blood Decay because apparently Blood Decays are the best tanks in Cataclysm. So here he goes. First thing I'm going to do is do my atonement spells because I want to get evangelism stacks. And I see the tank's dying pretty fast here, so I use Penance. Probably could have used Archangel before that Penance, but you know, I'm just kind of like testing the waters to see how much damage the tank is going to take. But at this point here, I get the feeling that the party, is going to get fucked up. So I pop Archangel, and I start spamming high HPS spells. And those will be Powered Shield and Renew, because those are my highest HPS spells for this situation. Just spamming Powered Shield and Renew. Here I go. More Renews and more Powered Shields. Using Penance there, but I get sheeped by this bullshit. It's really annoying. And then once I get out of it, I just keep spamming Powered Shield and Renew because those spells are high HPS. And then I Penance that. Good boy. Am I going to use Holy Fire? Yes, I do. I'm a dirty boy. I am a dirty boy. And here we go, Greater Heal, more high HPS spells, Powered Shield, more Renews. You know, just as soon as the high damage starts happening, that's all you gotta do. Just spam the high HPS spells and you'll be good to go. Here's a much more scuffed pull. So you can see what your Heroic Dungeons are probably going to be like when you do Dungeon Finder. It's going to be pretty terrifying. So let's take a gander at this, shall we? Here we go. I pop Power Infusion right away because I know the tank's going to get absolutely ass blasted in the ass. And of course, that's what's happening. So I just pop Archangel, Penance right away, start spamming Powered Shields and Renews, put Pain Suppression on the tank early because I just know he's going to get demolished. So I do that, use my Prayer of Healing with Inner Focus active, that's good, Penance again. Maybe use Holy Fire, didn't use Holy Fire, I want to use something more high HPS like Greater Heal. Then I use Flash Heal, don't know why I used Flash Heal there, probably shouldn't have. And then more Powered Shields and more Renews. Keep these guys alive. This guy's dying, so I use Penance, save his life. Then more Powered Shields and Renews. Greater Heal on this guy. Canceled it. Probably shouldn't have canceled it. I think it was a mistake, so the tank's going to die now because I canceled it. And, oh god. And then, yep, Powered Shield and Renews some more. Here we go. I'm going but I don't realize that I'm going So I just keep spamming, and Flash Heal, a little scary. There goes my mana bar. You don't want to use Flash Heal too much because your mana gets destroyed. I tried to use Divine Hymn here, but I don't have enough mana to do it. So I use Shadow Fiend instead, but that little lapse in judgment of my mana situation causes the tank to die. See, I'm trying to cast Divine Hymn here. It's just too late because I didn't have the mana for it. But, you know, I press Fade here because I'm getting railed by these things. And I just keep doing my thing, you know, high HPS spells, put a barrier down, because why not? Probably should have done that earlier. But here we go, inner focus again. So I got a prayer of healing there. And penance because it's efficient. Greater heal on this guy, save his life. And just trying to keep things together until we kill the trash pack. Yeah, that's basically what dungeons are going to be like for you guys. But you know, it's a good challenge. So try your best. You know. All right, let's go over a few bosses. So I'm going to do Halus first, Valiona and Theralion next, then Cho'gall, and then Nefarian and Onyxia after. And this part of the video won't take as long as you think because I'm only going to talk about Halus for around 60 seconds. Are you ready? Okay, here we go. So Disc Priest is the best healer on Halus by far. And the reason it's the best is because there's hardly any raid damage at all in the first half of the fight, which is the hardest part of the fight by far. It's basically all tank damage. And more importantly, Halus has a 600% increased damage taken modifier on him for the entire fight. And you know what that means? That means your healing strategy is quite literally Smite and Holy Fire on Halus for the entire fight. And you'll still use Powered Shield for Rapture. But that's basically it. And the damage is highest at the beginning of the fight, so you're going to pop Power Infusion and Archangel during Lust and just machine gun the living shit out of Smite and Holy Fire. That's all you got to do. And as for you Holy Priest enjoyers, don't even think about playing Holy Priest on this boss because it's absolutely fucking terrible. Just switch the disc, spam your 3 buttons, and don't be weird. Alright, next boss. So for Valiona and Theralion, the main thing you need to know is that there's not going to be a whole lot to heal, so you're probably going to have to use Powered Shield a bunch to make yourself go Also, pretty much all the damage on this fight is RNG, which is kind of annoying, but the most annoying mechanic that's RNG is Blackout. This ability happens while Valiona is active. It does a fuck ton of damage to the raid, and the damage is predictable, which would normally mean that you could prepare for the damage by pre-shielding. Except you can't, really, in this case, because if Blackout is cast on a rogue, a mage, or a paladin, they can just use an immunity to get rid of it, and nobody will take any damage, which is really stupid. But the second source of predictable damage happens to the melee DPS when Theralion is active, and that is Twilight Meteorite. This ability has a 6-second cast time, and the boss just spams it, so all you have to do is watch the cast bar and precast your Prayer of Healing so that it lands right as the ability is used. And it doesn't seem like this ability does too much damage, to be honest with you, so you're probably only going to be able to get 1 Prayer of Healing off each time. But let's take a look. Alright, so here's the start of the boss fight. You're going to want to get 5 stacks of Evangelism very quickly. Actually, very, very quickly. So that was like 5 seconds from the start of the video that the boss used Blackout. So there's Blackout on the frame right there. So like right as the boss is pulled, you should just start getting Evangelism stacks so that you have it in time for this Blackout. And since mana is going to be difficult to spend efficiently on this boss, you can throw out a few Powered Shields every so often. And this would be a good place to do it. So you see the DK got the Blackout here. DKs can't immune it. So you would want to start spamming Powered Shield as the raid kind of stacks up. So here you see everyone's going to run into the middle here. And I would use Powered Shield on people that are low health. The only person that's low health is the priest here. But there's like random damage happening in this phase all the time. So chances are as the raid is kind of stacking up, there will be a few people that will be not at 100% health, and you can just Powered Shield those people so that your glyph of Powered Shield doesn't overheal. So I would do that. And then I'll also pop Power Infusion and Archangel as you do the Powered Shield spam. So you're going to do 2 or 3 Powered Shields, that's all you'll have time for, and then the raid damage will happen. And it looks like this. And you just machine gun those Prayer of Healings. the Divine Aegises on the Prayer of Healings that you cast here probably won't expire worthless, because again, there's just random damage happening all the time. So all the Prayer of Healings you cast here are super juicy value. So definitely keep spamming Prayer of Healing like crazy here. Spam it until everyone's full health. And if you have to move for this flame thing, this flame breath, I would cast Powered Shield as you're moving and cast it on one of the melee DPS. That way you have the highest chance of your Powered Shield not expiring. If you cast it on the range, there's a high chance that it will expire worthless. And I'm not even going to tell you why that's the case. You either know or you don't know. Okay, it's just like you just got to know. But yeah. So I'd still be spamming Prayer of Healing. I'd be spamming Prayer of Healing here. Use Powered Shield on the melee while I'm moving. Keep casting Prayer of Healing. This guy's using Binding Heal for some reason. This guy's spamming Smite for some reason. People aren't even full health yet. Anyways, once people get full health, then you got to use Holy Fire, because Holy Fire will be off cooldown. So I would use that. And I would use 3 smites after the Holy Fire because of Glyph of Smite. And I'd also use Heal on the tank 1 time, so that the Weakened Soul is lower, so that you can use Rapture sooner. And then you kind of swap back and forth between that. And since it's going to be hard to go on this boss, you can just kind of spam heal. So your gameplay, when everyone's kind of like at full health like this, you're just going to do Holy Fire, Smite, then you're going to do heal spam on the tank, and you can use Penance off cooldown on whoever needs it. So like, you could use Penance on this Paladin here, is something you can do. But outside of using Penance, you could just Holy Fire, Smite, into heal spam on the tank, into Holy Fire, Smite, just repeat, just doing that, until the next blackout happens, which is going to be in 5 seconds. So let's see how that goes. Okay, who got it? Priest got it. Okay, so the priest can't immune it either, so you're going to use Powered Shield on 3 people. Pop Archangel first. Powered Shield on 3 people. I would do the Warlock here, this Warlock, and that Shaman, since they're not at full health. And then I'd start casting my Prayer of Healing as we get in. It looks like this guy has to dispel the debuff. Ideally, a Druid should dispel it, because a Druid is the only healer that doesn't have to precast something to deal with this damage. Every other healer should be like precasting a Chain Heal, precasting a Holy Radiance, precasting Prayer of Healing, So it should be a Druid that dispels it, but if you have to be the one to dispel it, then just go ahead and do that. But you should be precasting Prayer of Healing here for this damage that's going to happen. There it is. And just Prayer of Healing spam again. Just keep spamming it. And by the end of this phase, your mana should be about where this person's mana is. Like, you want it to be pretty low, because as soon as Theralion comes down, you're going to use Shadow Fiend Hemophobe right away. Get that shit on cooldown. But again, you can get fucked by RNG. In this phase, like the blackouts can get immuned, so that happens, you might end this phase with like 70% mana or 80% mana, in which case you're only going to be able to use Shadow Fiend, and then you'd have to use your Hymn of Hope later on into the fight. But regardless of what happens, you do need to use Shadow Fiend like right as Theralion comes down, so make sure you do that. Anyways, let's get into the next phase here. This is the transition. This is what it looks like. You get these swirly fucking things or whatever. And hopefully you're not the healer that has to go down into the Shadow Realm or whatever fucking bullshit it's called. Because I think Druids are the best healer to heal the Shadow Realm, not really Priests. Priests are the second best healer. Definitely do not send like a Shaman or a Paladin down. That would be completely retarded. Definitely Priest or Druid, but probably Druid is the healer I would send down. If you do send a priest down into the Shadow Realm, make sure that everyone that goes down is in the same group, so that you can use Prayer of Healing. But hopefully you don't get sent down. So here's Theralion. Sorry, that's Valiona, isn't it? I can't even see. Can't fucking... Oh no, that is Valiona. Okay, here's Theralion. So the damage in this phase is very low. And as you can see, the Twilight Meteorites are going to start happening. See this little purple arrow here? That's a Twilight Meteorite. So the melee should get smacked right there. You see how like a bunch of people got smacked there? That was the Twilight Meteorite. It doesn't do that much damage, but ideally you want to target the boss. You'll be able to see the cast bar. It's a 6-second cast. And just start casting your Prayer of Healing at like 4 seconds. So that lands right as the Twilight Meteorite happens. I think this guy gets the Twilight Meteorite next, doesn't he? Oh, also there's going to be like random damage happening during this phase. Like this Arcane Explosion thing does like little random damage or whatever. Just penance the people that take random damage, like the ranged DPS, if they take random damage, just use penance or use powered shield. You can use greater heal as well. Ideally you don't want to use greater heal because it's not efficient when you use it on somebody that doesn't have grace. But again, mana is going to be difficult to spend properly on this boss, so you can do it. It's up to you. And yeah, so this guy gets the Twilight Meteor right now. He's just going to stack up. I'd start casting Prayer of Healing, but it doesn't look like he's doing it. I don't know what this guy's doing. It doesn't matter. He's spamming Powered Shield for some reason. I don't fucking know why. And this is also some more random damage that happens. It doesn't really do much though. You just move out of it. And that's basically it for this phase. You don't really want to spend too much damage in this phase because there's just not that much damage going out. You know what I mean? You want to spend the bulk of your mana during Valiona because the blackouts hit really hard. But yeah, so this phase isn't too bad. It's just the Twilight Meteorite damage, and I'm pretty sure the Twilight Meteorites stop happening when the Deep Breath is going on. So there's going to be even less damage happening during this part. So, yeah. Oh, also these blue balls. I don't know if you can see that. Let me get a good shot of the blue balls. Maybe you can see it there. So these blue balls here that you can see, these also do damage to the raid. They do like little bits of random damage, and that damage kind of ramps up. That's the reason you go into the Shadow Realm on this boss, to get rid of that damage. So I think as the Theralion phase is coming to an end, the damage from these balls is going to ramp up. So that's why people are taking damage here. It's just like little random damage and stuff. But it's not too bad. You can just use Prayer of Healing to deal with that. And then Theralion's going to come, not Theralion, sorry, Valiona is going to come down again. And then you're just going to repeat what you did in phase 1. Nothing too crazy. Let's see what happens with this blackout here. So you're going to get your 5 stacks of Evangelism. And who gets the blackout? A mage got it. So that mage is going to immune that blackout for sure, right? Let's see. Yep, he immuned it. So nothing to heal. Feels bad, man. But I think this guy went too fast. You ideally want to be at the end of the second Valiona phase. Is when I think you should probably be because your second Shadow Fiend is going to come off cooldown at some point during the second Theralion phase. So it's going to come off right here, because we used to add a minute 30 seconds in. We use our first Shadow Fiend around minute 30 seconds in. So it's going to come off way over here, probably deep into the second Theralion phase, like right when almost when the boss is about to die, but not quite, is when you're going to get your next Shadow Fiend. So try to be either at the end of the second Valiona phase, or at some point during the second Theralion phase is when you want to be so that you can just press Shadow Fiend and get some mana back, and then you should be good for the rest of the fight. You're going to get a third Valiona phase, though, at the end here. Oh, here it is, yeah. And you're going to get a couple blackouts before the boss dies. Chances are one of your players will just suicide with the blackout, so you can just kill the boss. But hopefully that doesn't happen, because you won't have much to heal. But ideally, going in this phase, you'll be at around 40% mana this last Valiona phase, because you'll have used Shadow Fiend, right? And your Hymn of Hope will also come off cooldown near the very end of the boss, so you'll have mana for the end. And you can just keep doing the strategy that you did for the first 2 Valiona phases. Just spend the rest of your mana, powered shield a little bit before the blackout happens, spam Prayer of Healing, you know the deal. You know the deal. And you should be good. That's that boss. Alrighty, moving right along here. So next up is Cho'gall. I've already covered Cho'gall in my Resto Druid guide, but I felt like I should cover it again, since Disc Priest has a kind of interesting strategy on this boss. So Cho'gall is a 9-minute fight. You're going to be able to get 2 Shadow Fiends and 1 Hymn of Hope off. Technically, you can get 2 Hymn of Hopes off if you use your first one within the first 60 seconds of the fight, but you don't have to do that if you don't want to. And phase 3 of this boss is going to be a big HPS check, so you'll need to be spamming Prayer of Healing and Prayer of Mending pretty much the entire time, which might make you think that you'd want to go into the last phase with a full bar of mana. But actually, no. Disc Priest wants to be almost going into the last phase, because you're going to try to use your Shadow Fiend right before Lust is popped, and then you're going to follow that up with Hymn of Hope, which should give you at least 60% of your mana back, and that would be more than enough to finish out the phase, I feel. Now, in terms of healing, the main thing you want to accomplish on this boss is you want your Divine Aegises to not expire worthless with every Prayer of Healing that you cast. This will require really good timing, because the main source of raid damage in the first 2 phases are these Shadow Elementals. Cho'gall will absorb them like this, and then a few moments later the raid will get hit with 3 bursts of raid damage. And your goal will be to squeeze in 3 Prayer of Healings before the 3rd burst of raid damage hits. And any Prayer of Healings that you cast after that 3rd burst of raid damage will be much less efficient, because all of your Divine Aegises will expire worthless. So here's the timing. The moment Cho'gall sucks this Shadow Elemental in, start counting to 5. When you get to 5, that's when the raid damage is going to hit. So you want to cast Archangel and begin your Prayer of Healing cast when you get to 3 seconds. Here's what it looks like. You gotta start counting now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you land your Prayer of Healing at the right time, you'll be able to squeeze in 3 before the raid damage is over. Now let's watch the fight, and I'll explain more as I go. Alright, here's the start of the fight. So there's not going to be too much damage happening until the Shadow Elemental spawns. So you kind of just want to do your low damage healing rotation. And I'm going to define what that is right now. Okay, so it's basically what I said before. The low damage healing rotation is Holy Fire, Smite, 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 and it's Penance off cooldown, heal on the tank every 12 seconds because of Strength of Soul, and Powered Shield on the tank every 12 seconds for Rapture. Also, you can use heal more than just once if you want to. That's the low damage healing rotation. So when I say that, that's what it is, because I don't want to keep saying that over and over and over again. So I'm just going to call it the low damage healing rotation. Okay, so you're just going to do that until this AoE damage starts happening. And it's going to happen shortly here. Just got to wait for the Shadow Lord to get sucked off. Okay, there it is. So here we go. You start counting once he gets sucked. So let me try this again. All right. 1, 2, 3. Start casting. 4, 5. There's the raid damage. So your Prayer of Healing should land right as the damage happens. This guy's only going to get 2 Prayer of Healings off because he didn't precast properly. So there we go. He only got 2 off. He might have only got 1 off. But yeah, so any Prayer of Healing he casts after this point, his Divine Aegises are going to expire worthless because he didn't cast it early enough. So yeah, you want to try and squeeze in 3 Prayer of Healings every single time. And then after the raid damage happens and everyone's full health again, you just go back to your low damage healing rotation. Until the next bit of raid damage happens, and this one's going to be a little bit different because this is where the raid's going to spread out, right? So here we go. Shadow Lord gets sucked. 1, 2, 3. Start casting. 4, 5. Boom. Okay, this time he did get a Prayer of Healing cast off at the right time, but I think he fucked up by doing this. He starts casting Prayer of Healing too early, and this is going to hit the raid when everyone's full health. Yeah, don't ever do this, okay? Don't ever cast Prayer of Healing on people who are full health. That strategy will not be viable until like Dragon Soul, and I'm not even sure if it will be viable in Dragon Soul. So just don't do what this guy's doing, okay? But yeah, he did get 3 Prayer of Healings off, technically, which is good. Anyway, so here comes the ads. And the ads do pretty significant tank damage. So you're going to have 2 tanks taking a lot of damage, and hopefully they'll be in the same group, because what you want to do is you want to spam Prayer of Healing on the tank group specifically. Don't worry about the rest of these groups, right? Because if you use Prayer of Healing on these groups, your Divine Aegis is just going to expire worthless. So you want to use it on the group with the tanks in it so that your Divine Aegis on the tanks will not expire worthless. The Divine Aegis on the DPS will expire worthless, but that's okay. This is the best you're going to get. So you're just going to spam Prayer of Healing on this group here is what you want to be doing. And another optimization you can make, there will be times when the tank is going to run the ads out, which means the tanks will be really spread out from each other. So what I would do is I would put myself into the tank group so that I can stand in my character right in the middle between the one tank and the other tank and just spam Prayer of Healing on myself so that the Prayer of Healing hits everybody in that group. So you'll see here the tank is going to pull the ads out. I would still be spamming Prayer of Healing here until like 2 or more people are topped up, and then I would go back to the low damage healing strategy. Or healing rotation, rather. But anyways, here goes the tank. He's walking out. He's walking the ads out. And, yeah, so I would stand my character, like, right here. So if I did need to spam Prayer of Healing during this point, I would be able to hit both tanks. It also depends on your strategy, what your guild decides to do. Some guilds I've seen, just, like, the tanks are always spread out really far from each other. So, like, once the ads come in, the tank is already, like, way the fuck over here. And the other tank is, like, right here. So if that happens, you definitely want to stand your character right in the middle so you can Prayer of Healing yourself. But that's basically it. That's just going to repeat for most of the fight, those 2 phases. So just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. And, oh yeah, I forgot to talk about Shadow Fiend. So you're going to use your Shadow Fiend after this first spread out phase. Where is it? We were just out of here. Yeah, after. Sorry, not there. You're going to use your Shadow Fiend after this tank group is topped up with Prayer of Healing is probably when you want to use your Shadow Fiend. You're not going to use Hymn of Hope, though. You save Hymn of Hope for later. Or you can use Hymn of Hope, like, super early into the fight. Like, right after the first AoE phase, you can use Hymn of Hope if you really want to. It doesn't really do much, but it's up to you, whatever you want to do. Anyway, so you're going to use Shadow Fiend there. And then this phase, these 2 phases are just going to repeat for a long time. For a long, long time. And you want to be almost dead when the boss is about to transition into phase 3, which is around here. The boss transitions at 25%. He's at 29% here. And you want to use your conch pot shortly before he transitions into phase 3. So, like, where's the stacked up? Okay, so here's a stacked up raid damage phase, right? Yeah. So here's the stacked up raid damage phase. Once the tank group gets topped up, because you can spam Prayer of Healing on this group too, most of your Divine Aegises will expire except for the one on the tank, but, you know, if you need to go faster, you could do that. If you don't need to go faster, then just go back to your low damage healing rotation after casting the initial 3 Prayer of Healings, okay? But anyways, you'd want to use Conch Pot here because the boss is about to transition, so this is where you would use your Conch Pot. And then the transition is going to happen. You're going to go into this phase with whatever mana you got from your Conch Pot. So you should be dead when you use your Conch Pot. That'll bring you up to like 10% or 20%. I don't know how much it does. It's not a whole lot. But ideally you want to be about like 10 to 20% mana going into this phase. This phase 3 here. So you can spam Prayer of Healing a little bit, spam Prayer of Healing a little bit, Prayer of Mending. You know, you're going to spend a decent amount of mana at the start here. Probably like 20% of your mana. But then Lust is going to get popped. And when Lust gets popped, you want to use Shadow Fiend right before the Lust. There's the Lust right there. So you want to use Shadow Fiend right before that, and then Hymn of Hope. And that's going to pick your mana bar up to about 60%. And that should give you enough mana for the rest of the fight. And when there's big damage happening, you want to make sure you only use high HPS spells. So you're going to have Archangel up at some point during this phase. You're going to have Archangel up, and then you're just going to spam Prayer of Healing and Prayer of Mending. And you're not really going to use much else. You don't have to use Holy Fire. You don't have to use Penance unless someone really needs it. And you're just going to, you're just going to do that. While your Archangel buff is active, that's all you want to be doing. You want to just be spamming Prayer of Healing and Prayer of Mending. And then once your Archangel buff goes away, you'll want to do Holy Fire, Smite, 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 and that'll give you 4 stacks of Evangelism. And then once your Holy Fire comes off cooldown, you just use it. There's your 5 stacks. Press Archangel immediately, and then keep spamming Prayer of Healing and Prayer of Mending for the whole phase. And that's how you want to go And you'll use Divine Hymn as well at some point. You could probably use Divine Hymn like right at the end of the Lust, and I think that'll give you like more ticks of Divine Hymn if you use it right at the end, because it'll snapshot with Lust, I'm pretty sure. That's when I'd use Divine Hymn probably. And yeah, I think that's it. This guy looks like he completely royally botched this last phase. Oh, and he's also using the instant mana pot. That's also bad. Let's see what he did here. Out of curiosity, let's just see. So he's as fuck, which is fine, but the problem is his Shadow Fiend, he used his Shadow Fiend too late. His first Shadow Fiend, so he's still got like 2 minutes left on this motherfucker. So he's going into the highest damage part of the fight with no mana and 2 minutes on his Shadow Fiend. So he's fucked. How many Prayer of Healings is he going to get off? That's 1. 2. He's Greater Heal? Why Greater Heal? 3. 4. 5 Prayer of Healings. Okay, so we're about 30 seconds into this phase, maybe a bit more. He's only gotten 5 Prayer of Healing casts off, and he's dead and the raid's just dying because he has no mana. He uses his instant mana pot, starts spamming Prayer of Healing again, probably not using Prayer of Mending, I can't tell. And now he's again. This is the situation you definitely don't want to be in. Mass Dispel. Oh my god. This is what happens when you don't manage your mana properly. You're going to end up in this situation where the whole raid is just dying a horrible death, and there's nothing you can do about it because you just didn't manage your mana properly. How do they even live this? Also, the strategy is horrible. The raid is spread out so much. It's insane. The raid should not be spread out this much. You need to spread it out a little bit, but not this much. Yeah, this is all bad. Uses Divine Hymn, but it's Disc Priest Divine Hymn, so it's not going to do anything. And this is hard to watch. Oh, he's got some mana back now. He must have gotten a Mana Tide or something, or an Innervate. I know back in original Cataclysm, Innervate worked the way that it used to, where it just gives you like 20% of your mana back, as opposed to how it will work this time around, where it will only give you like 5% of your mana if you use it on other people that are not yourself. So maybe that's what we got. I think you got a Mana Tide though, not an Innervate. Let's see here. That looks like Mana Tide to me. Let me just back up here. Yeah, gotta be Mana Tide, right? Mana Tide, if I remember correctly, was also much stronger in original Cataclysm at the beginning. It was like really, really strong. And you'd also run 2 Resto Shamans in your raid instead of 1. You'll certainly not run 2 Resto Shamans in this day and age. Definitely not. So you're not going to be able to rely on Mana Tide as much as you would have been able to back then. But yeah, they managed to scrape through. It's not pretty to watch, but they managed to do it. Oof. Yeah, this is pretty miserable. Anyways, that's the fight. All right, you guys. We are finally on Nefarian and Onyxia. It's time to break out the woke spec, baby. And why are we using this spec? Well, it's because there's going to be a lot of tank healing to do in the last phase, also in the first phase, but mainly in the last phase. And the tank that we're going to be healing is going to be running around the room like Sanic. So we're going to need a lot of mobility. And on top of that, the Renew spec is just very efficient for tank healing compared to the regular disc spec. Especially if you have enough haste to get 6 ticks of Renew. I don't know how much haste that will be in order to get that, but it's probably around like 1500, 1600 in combination with the 5% haste buff that you'll get from Raid and the 14% haste buff that you get from Borrowed Time. Anyways, the main mechanic to be aware of on this boss is Electrocute. It smacks the Raid for around 80% of their health, and this mechanic happens every time Nefarian loses 10% of his health. Now, if you're a Wrath Disc Priest enjoyer, you might be saying to yourself, oh goody, Disc is really good at healing this type of damage, right? Wrong. Disc in Cataclysm is terrible at healing big singular bursts of raid damage because pre-shielding isn't efficient, and when you cast Prayer of Healing to heal up the damage after it's happened, your Divine Aegises are going to expire worthless. So you know what you're going to do when the whole raid gets hit for 80% of their health? You are going to heal the tank and let the other healers heal up the raid. Now let's talk about mana. The mana situation on this boss is going to be weird. You're not going to be able to line up your Hymn of Hopes and Shadow Fiends on this one, so you'll have to use them separately. And ideally, you want to be full mana going into Phase 2, because Phase 2 is where you're going to pump your little titties off. Phases 1 and 3, on the other hand, will be trying to avoid spending mana as much as possible. However, you will get your Shadow Fiend and Hymn of Hope back deep into Phase 3, and once that happens, you'll be able to heal much more aggressively to close out the fight. Lastly, we are going to be swapping between Inner Will and Inner Fire. You'll be using Inner Will for Phase 2 since we're going to be spamming Prayer of Healing like a mad whore. And Phases 1 and 3, you'll be using Inner Will since we'll be using lots of Powered Shield and Renew on the tanks. Also, that low damage healing rotation that I mentioned before, well, we're going to add to it now since we're using the Woke spec. So every time you cast Powered Shield, you're going to have the ability to use Renew on 3 players with Borrowed Time active. So you're going to be doing that on top of casting at least 1 heal or greater heal on the tank every 12 seconds, casting Penance off cooldown, casting Holy Fire, Smite, Smite, Smite. You still got to be doing all that. Although during Phase 3, I would recommend only using Smite for Evangelism stacks because you want to stay as mobile as possible. So instead of using lots of Smite, I would use more heal instead so that the weakened soul on the tank goes away faster, which means you can use Powered Shield on the tank more often, which means you can move more often since you're using Powered Shield all the time, and Powered Shield is instant cast. Alright? So let's get into it. Okay, you're going to drop down. You can press Prayer of Healing right off the rip if you want to be a dirty boy. It's up to you. And this first phase is basically just tank healing with a little bit of burst raid damage sprinkled in. So you're just going to do your low damage healing strategy. Make sure you get 5 stacks of Evangelism pretty quickly, because what's going to happen here is okay, the entire raid just got tail swiped there. That is probably not supposed to happen, but maybe it is, I don't know. But you don't have to heal this damage, you can just let the other healers heal that up. But this is what's going to happen. So you're going to have, let me just try to get a good angle here. So the boss, Nefarian, is going to be landing, Onyxia is going to be active, and then these skeletons are going to be hitting the tank. So all 3 of these enemies are going to be active like right there at the same time, and all the tanks are going to be somewhat near each other. So what you want to do here is pop Archangel and just Powered Shield 1 tank and Renew all 3 tanks. And then you can Powered Shield the other 2 tanks. And then besides that, you're still just doing your low damage healing strategy. And you'll probably be assigned to heal the skeleton tank here, which shouldn't be too bad. You can heal multiple tanks at the same time, by the way. You can also maintain grace on multiple tanks at the same time. It's a little difficult, but you'll get a feel for it as you do it. But yeah. Don't be afraid to use Powered Shield, because you are an Inner Will, so Powered Shield will be pretty efficient. And anyways, this is just going to happen. It's just going to be tank damage until the first electrocute happens, which is when Nefarian gets to 90%. And here's what you're going to want to do. So there's the electrocute. Make sure the tank is topped. And so there's the raid damage. That's how much raid damage happens. And you're going to let the other healers heal all that up. All you're focused on is keeping the tank alive, whatever tank you're assigned to heal. Just keep them alive. And once the raid is kind of picked up here, so see how the raid's slowly going to go up, slowly going to go up. As the other healers pick the raid up, you are going to use Hymn of Hope right now. This is where I would use it. Don't use Hymn of Hope when the raid is like really low health, right? Because all the other healers are going to be focused on healing the raid instead of the tanks. But when the raid is all picked up like this, then the healers will switch their attention to the tank, so you won't have to heal the tank anymore, which means you can, you're free to use Hymn of Hope. That's where I would use that. And again, you don't want to spend too much mana in this phase. You're trying to be full mana going into phase 2. So don't go too crazy. And phase 2 is going to happen after the second electrocute. Oh, by the way, if you get dominated, the boss doms you like this, you can stack up the buff if you want. Using number 1 here, you can stack it up. It gives you a healing buff, but it only lasts for like 15 seconds, I think. 15. So alternatively, you can just break out instantly like this guy does. It's up to you. But anyways, the next electrocute is going to happen here at 80%. And you're going to need to use raid cooldowns for this, because the raid needs to be picked up super quickly, since phase 2 is going to happen immediately after this. So yeah, you can help out with a Prayer of Healing if you want. If you have the mana for it, it's up to you. But yeah, that's all it is for that phase. Not too bad. Now this part is a little bit tricky. You're going to wait for the lava to touch your toes, like right here. Right as the lava like touches your feet, you're going to want to use Powered Shield on one person, and then renew 2 other people. Ideally, you would want to heal the people that are outside of the Prayer of Healing group. So like the way these guys have their group set up, you have one group that can be Prayer of Healing, and then there's 2 people in these other 2 groups. Ideally, you would want to have 4 people in this group and 5 people in this group, so you can Prayer of Healing both. But these guys have done it this way, so regardless, you're still going to use Powered Shield on the person that's in the less favorable Prayer of Healing group. So you'll use Powered Shield on him, and then renew 3 times. And then make sure you have Archangel up for this phase as well, and Power Infusion. You're going to want to pop Archangel and Power Fusion, then do the Powered Shield, renew. And then once you're on the platform, press Inner Fire, and then start spamming Prayer of Healing on this group. And you never want to let this group get low at all. Like, you just want to spam Prayer of Healing relentlessly on this group. And the goal here is to go to about 70% mana, use your Shadow Fiend, which will pick you back up to 100%, and then yourself again. That's how much mana you want to spend in this phase. You want to just spend all of your mana. Just spend all of it, mostly on Prayer of Healing. Like, do not even, unless it's absolutely necessary to heal these people, just keep spamming Prayer of Healing on this group. Just keep spamming it, so keep them at full health. And every time that you use Powered Shield for Rapture, make sure you're powered shielding the people that are in these less favorable groups. And after you do that Powered Shield, make sure to cast Renew as well on these 3 people. You're going to keep doing that over and over. Make sure to use Penance if these people need to be healed up, because that's highly probable. And yeah, so you're just going to keep doing that until you go And that should be good there. This guy goes too quickly and they almost die. So you're going to go into this phase with more mana than this guy did, hopefully. And you're going to heal it better, too. So you should be fine. And I would also use Conk Pot right here. Like, right as this phase is coming to an end, I would cast Prayer of Healing, Prayer of Healing, Prayer of Healing. And then right as this damage stops happening, Conk Pot is what I would do. While I'm still on the platform. I'd literally just use it while I'm on the platform. Which will give you a little bit mana for this phase. And you won't need too much mana, because you won't be doing too much healing at the start. So you only need a little bit. And you're going to be healing the tank over here. This tank with the skeletons, he's almost dying because this guy's not in range, but this is who you're going to be healing. But you also want to heal both tanks because you can put Renew on both tanks after you press Powered Shield. And you can cast Penance on either tank too. You can maintain Grace on both tanks, which is something you should be trying to do as well. It's a little tricky to do it, but you can do it with enough practice. You can do it. And if you have your Resto Shaman should be casting Riptide on both tanks as much as possible. Like, your Resto Shaman should maintain Riptide on both tanks in this phase, because if they do that, then you don't have to spec Inspiration, which means you can spec into Soul Warding, which is really good, because that means you can Powered Shield both tanks right before the Electrocute happens, which will be really helpful with keeping them alive. So definitely tell your Resto Shaman to maintain Riptide on both tanks. That's like extremely important. But yeah, this is just going to be your low damage healing rotation, except you're going to use heal more than you use smite. You don't want to use smite too much because of what I said before. It's just you're not going to be mobile enough. You'd rather just use heal to reduce the duration of Weakened Soul, so that you can use Powered Shield more often, so that you can keep up with the tank. And you want to kind of stay diagonal to the tank. So try to stay like in this vicinity here, like diagonal. Don't chase the tank. You never want to be like, look at what this guy does here. Like right here. Yeah, see how he's chasing the tank? You never want to be chasing the tank. Okay, you want to be ahead of the tank. So make sure you're doing that. Also, this is just really risky because Nefarian is constantly like turning. So you could get clipped by his breath if you stand here. So definitely stand ahead of the tank. Although I think you have to watch out for his tail too, so maybe you can't do that. I don't know. No, I just think the boss is not like turned properly here. That's what it is. But as long as you're like here, like in line with the tank or ahead of the tank, you should be okay, I would think. But yeah. And again, for each of these electrocutes, you're not even going to heal them. You're just going to focus on keeping the tanks alive, okay? The other healers, like the Paladin and the Shaman, they're much better suited for healing this kind of raid damage than you are. So just kind of let them do it and just keep the tanks alive is your best bet. And back in the day, I remember watching the world first kill video for this boss. The Disc Priest used Binding Heal, mainly, to heal the tank here. I wouldn't recommend doing that, especially with this spec. What you can do is, after the electrocute happens, let's see here. Okay, so here's an electrocute. So after the electrocute happens, you can penance yourself into an immediate binding heal or two on the tank. You could do that because both you and the tank would have grace, which would massively improve the efficiency of binding heal. I guess not massively, it'd be 24%. But yeah, that's something you could do. Alternatively, you could just penance yourself, Powered Shield one of the tanks, and then put Renew on yourself, along with Renew on the other two tanks as well. You could do that. Or you could just let another healer heal you, because there's a pretty decent amount of time between each electrocute, so you don't even have to heal yourself, to be honest. You could just let one of the other healers heal you. If you want to focus more on tank healing, it's up to you. But at some point here, your Shadow Fiend and Hymn of Hope are going to come off cooldown. And you ideally want to use your Hymn of Hope when the ads are, not active. But you can just send your Shadow Fiend. You can just fucking send it on the boss when it comes off cooldown. But yeah. That's pretty much it, I suppose. Did I cover everything? I think I covered everything. Yeah, I think so. So this phase isn't too bad. You just got to make sure you're not chasing the tank. That's the most important thing. You just want to stay mobile. And it will be a little bit tricky to execute, I think, because there's a lot of different with that low healing, low damage healing rotation we talked about. There's a lot of things going on with that, right? So there's a lot of different things you have to juggle, which will be difficult, but you know you'll be putting a lot of attempts into this boss, so you'll get used to it, and I think you'll be fine. I think you'll be fine, honestly. Try to go by the end of the boss, obviously. It might be difficult though because your Shadow Fiend and Hymn of Hope are going to come up like when the boss is at 20% or 30% or something. So you're not going to have that much time to go. But that's also a good thing in a way, right? Because you can very easily keep the tanks alive with that much mana that you have at your disposal. So, okay, the tank just got absolutely destroyed there. But, oh, they got lucky. The ads despawned at the same time. That's funny. No, that's it, you guys. If you managed to make it all the way through my senseless rambling, then I commend you. This guide took a lot more effort than any other guide I've ever done, so I hope you enjoyed it. And if you didn't enjoy it, then fuck you!